This computer.
What's up, Jen? How are you, my love?
I'm good. How are you?
We had a quick hello and, feeling things out, did some grounding, some updating before we started here. And I was like, Kristen was like talking about, this is what we want to talk about. I'm like, wait, stop, let's press record.
Totally.
So we're like literally riddled with excitement just to have you on the show because you're just up to so much, and it's very much in alignment with what we do and what our podcast is about. And I just want to go through your introduction because it's lengthy, and we're going to
feel free not to read the whole thing.
Well,
it's good.
I really want to give people an idea of what's possible, especially for those that are inspired who want to make a change in the world, because these are the things that are mountain movers. And these are the things that help our communities get more in touch with like our inner core and who we are and how we can really live in the most authentic self and the biggest possibilities. Like, what is it?
And living in our purpose.
Our purpose, our blueprint, all the things. So let's get right into it. So Jenn Pike, thank you for coming. You are an entrepreneur. You're a functional hormone practitioner, a cycle syncing educator, an online movement studio. That's awesome, by the way. I love that. Body recomp. So we'll talk a little bit about that. You have a podcast called The Simplicity Sessions, the Hormone Project Academy. You have an academy and the Simplicity Women's Wellness Clinic. Welcome.
Let me give you a round of applause, Miss Jenn.
Miss Jenn.
Miss Jenn with 2 N's. Love it.
Yeah. And you've been on multiple
labor of love.
Yeah. And clearly you're living in your passion here. We understand that you've been on other podcasts to talk a lot about, what you do. What we like to do and what Kristen had already mentioned is our listeners are really always interested in how you got there. Like, what was your story? What was that driving force? How do you live in your passion? And then I want to get into the entrepreneurship of a little bit of business and how you layered up in your business and how long that took and all that stuff. So let's start, because you got everything has something in common here, and this is helping someone really line up all their chakras mostly. We do our best. But this is a lot of tools. So how did this start? Where did this all come from for you?
It's like as far back as I can remember, I've had an energy in me of like, if something has interested me, I've walked straight towards it and asked questions, gotten curious, learned more. And, I really have only needed to hear a little bit to know if it's a yes or a no for me before then I decide if I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that. And I definitely am here living my purpose. I don't question that for one moment. The way that I show up and what I create and how I do that has shape shifted many times over the years. But the main mission and three-way has always stayed the same, which is helping women, to be as connected to their bodies as possible, because I really do believe, and I know this to be true from 26 years of being in practice, when you can connect a woman to her body and to have a deeper understanding of the incredible gifts that live within her, it is the portal for her to be able to wake up and to create and innovate in every other area of her life, whether it's her relationships, it's being a mother, it's in business, it's in her health, it's in her community. If she is not connected to the woman that she is, that is like the epicenter of every symptom. And that's really its origin. That's its birthplace. And so I have, in many different ways, when I first started out, I registered my first company when I was 17, and I started off, I was like teaching group exercise, and you didn't have to have your own company to go and be like an aerobics instructor back in the 90s when I was doing that. But there was something in me that was like, oh, I should go and create a business. Like And I think in that part, it was like, I need it to sound legit. So I registered a company called Balancing Bodies when I was 17.
Wow.
And, you know, like I had just graduated high school when I did that. And I was heading off to travel, and then I was going to school for my career. And I always knew that it was going to be something with the body. I thought for a very long time, it would always be exercise oriented. I thought I was going to be like the Jillian Michaels of the sport trainers for athletes. I worked
But
with
that's
a ton
a really
of
good foundation to start off with. It really is. I mean, that's how I started. And I mean, it just goes up from there, really.
Well, and you know, it's like people utilize exercise and come to exercise for so many different reasons, right? Like no matter what your ultimate goal is, people choose to move their body because they want to feel a different way. Right? Whether they're going to it because they, you know, they might show up originally because they want to look a different way, but ultimately we want to feel a different way. And so for me, I loved how it made me feel. It was fun. It was, you know, there weren't a lot of rules around it. So I had a lot of creative ability, and every client I worked with was, you know, not only was I in school, but every client I worked with, I was like, oh, I'm a student again. Like it was just this perpetual, you know, classroom that I was in all the time. But I got to this point where after working for a lot of years with athletes, where I was also working part-time at a studio where I grew up at a big gym, actually with all women, and majority of them were moms, and I wasn't a mom yet. And I was just so intrigued and, you know, blown away by their ability to raise kids, run a household, work a full-time job, and still find the time to go and exercise and work out. And I just really started to recognize these were like, I began to refer to them as my athletes of everyday life. And it was actually harder for them because they didn't have a team. They did not have, you know, the trainers and the, you know, chiropractors and the nutritionists and all of that. So they were choosing themselves every time they showed up to come to my class or come to a session. And that was, I was just like, yeah, like I was fist pumping that. And I was just like, oh,
hell yeah. That's what I say to my ladies in my classes. I'm like, you guys are fucking here every day for you. Like, holy shit. That is,
and I don't think we
I actually have to tell them to like take a break.
Like I don't think we celebrate enough the action of choosing yourself.
I agree.
Right? Like, there are so many things that could take up our time and energy in a day, and that we could choose to do, or, you know, fill the time up with, or distract ourselves with, or numb ourselves with, or whatever it may be. And so, you know, I've always said to my students, literally the hardest exercise you will ever do is showing up. Anything else you do beyond that is just like a bonus. But 100%. For you to actually get here, like that is the hardest.
I agree. Because that's right mindset right there. Like deciding to get out of your bed to prepare your ass to get your ass to the gym.
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's like
so
a
that,
ritual.
You know, it is a ritual, right? It is a ritual. It's an amazing form of, you know, of self-care. And so that's really where it started for me. And then I just, you know, went into deeper conversations with the clients I was training. And then what I started to recognize is that exercise was only getting these women so far. And then I dove deeper and went back to school in 2001. And that's when I did holistic nutrition. And then that, you know, amplified what I was doing in terms of personal training. And I'm also trained as a medical exercise specialist. I was doing rehab for a period of time with people, like, you know, post physiotherapy, they'd move out of physio and then come to me. And then what was happening is in a lot of those conversations, the exercise and the nutrition was coming back to, you know, I'm eating right, I'm moving well, I still do not feel right. There's something else that's going on. And it kept coming back around to hormones being the possibility. And in around all this time as well, too, I had my first child, my daughter, and I had this like huge aha moment where when you work with people who are in a situation that you're not in. So I was listening to all these moms. I was training these moms. I wasn't a mom. I was hearing them, but I did not get it. And then I had a child and I was like, oh,
light bulb is like, damn.
Oh,
wow.
Okay. This is meant. All right. And so that opened up a whole new portal for me. And for many years, you know, then I had another child. And so then I was just so excited to work with moms and young families and did that. And then it just got to a point where I knew there were things happening on the other side of what she wasn't telling me, on the other side of her symptoms. And I started to dive deeper into female physiology and endocrinology specifically, like into women's health and hormones specifically. And so I really just like kind of moved out of any of the other learning that I was doing. And that is what I dove into, and started that, 18 years ago now. And that's really where I've parked myself, and it is just evolved. So then the way that I trained people changed based on what they needed, depending on what was going on in their body and honestly what their capacity was. So it was no longer about creating these like, kick-ass calorie torching, like, just like throw your body against the wall, give it all you got, go home and go home. Like I was just like, this is not serving these women. They are showing up.
So much more than that.
Right. So there was just this evolution. And then I owned my own brick and mortar that I opened in 2010. I opened up a studio, and in that teaching and community, that really became this incredible melting pot for so many women. And that is really what led me to the next, because the conversations that happened in that space, in the classes and in the hallways and in the lounge, really it birthed a book through me. So I wrote my first book, The Simplicity Project, in 2012. That was like everything I wanted these women to know in one location. And then from there, I converted that into an online program. And that then I did for years. And that then taught me that those were the foundations, but what women needed to go deeper on again were the hormones, which is where the Hormone Project came from. That program I've been teaching for 7 years. And that really I refer to as like, it is everything you needed to know about your body that you should have been taught from a very young age that you don't know. And then you arrive into your late 20s, your 30s, your 40s. You're like, what is going on? You don't understand what your body is trying to communicate with you.
Yeah.
Too often women are dismissed. It's like, just take the pill, or like, this is just the phase. You got to suck it up. These are the cards you dealt. Like, it just, kind of blows to be a woman in some areas and some which ways. And I was like, that's actually BS. I don't believe that at all. I believe that if we actually knew more about our bodies and you would empower these women instead of dismissing them, we could change majority of the way that these women are feeling. And when you, again, I said in the beginning, when you do this for a woman, you don't just supercharge her hormones, you supercharge her whole fucking life. Like you literally change her life. So that's
I got goosebumps, Jen. You are a force to be reckoned with. Holy shit.
So that is what lights me up. And the Academy is actually brand spanking new. And we can chat about that if we want in a little bit, but so that's really been the evolution. And so my online studio, which is Synced, it is a studio that is based off the 4 phases of the female cycle. We bring in the lunar energy into it as well. Beautiful. It is a place to land for women, to give them permission to move their body in a supportive way, not a hustle and grind kind of way. And so, I'm always evolving and, listening and learning and sharing. And that is my passion. It's what I love to do.
Well, this is what's blowing my mind right now, is how young you started.
Yeah.
And like that driving force. Cause I don't know, maybe everything has a reason in the way that I was brought up, but those terms didn't come to me a bit later in life. Mm-hmm. So I understand that fire, because I had that eventually, once I got clear of like my own shit. That fire was so fucking strong. Nothing was going to stop me, but I was still in my way. So that was part of my journey, was peeling back so I could just keep evolving, where I feel like you kind of had that already.
Oh yeah.
So your resume starts actually quite young. So I'm actually super curious as to how you were supported as a child to be so confident enough to come to these terms and just know that this was your life's purpose. It may not have been you didn't have the exact answer right there, but you were leaning into the right direction.
Yeah.
What supported that?
I mean, my parents 100%, and really anybody who is around me. And it's interesting. Like, so I'm adopted. And so, my parents, I've met my whole birth family. Like, I've talked another podcast, and I have one on my own, the whole story about this, but, you know, my mom and dad are like, we picked you up from the hospital and it's like, you looked at us and were like, I'm good. I got this. Like, I'll walk myself out to the car and I'm good. Like, they were like, I was the middle child and they're like, you just were so easy. Like, you put yourself to sleep. If you woke up in the middle of the night, we could hear you, but you didn't, like, you know, we didn't need to come in and do anything. And then from a very young age, you know, right out of kindergarten, they were like, she knows her path. Like, she's the leader in the class. And so there's like a positive to that and there's not. Every, you know, area in my life, it was always like, oh, she's a leader. She's good. She doesn't need help. So the other side of that is it was really hard for me a lot of time to ask for help because everyone reconveyed the message to me that I didn't need help, that like, I got this.
Oh, cool. There you go.
So,
That's the juice.
so it was,
There you
so
go.
that for me, like, I'm grateful for it because it served me. But what ended up happening is as I got older, because I was always very like tenacious and not on purpose. And when I say that, it's like, I was always kind of the purple duck in a yellow duck world. Like, if everyone was going to the right, I didn't choose left because I wanted to be a rebel. I was just like, but why do we have to go right? Like, is the right the only way? Or like, what is over to the left? Or like, what if we just went 30 degrees this way?
Curious.
I was always curious.
I call you a sacred rebel though. Sorry. That's what I call ourselves too.
You don't call her a curious duck.
No, sacred rebel is badass.
Sacred rebel. I like that.
There you go. I like that one. But yeah, so that's kind of what it was. But then what I ended up falling into is I had a lot of mentors in my life, but they were all men. It was all very masculine energy. And so then I started to shape, and I think as well too, because I was working in this very like male dominant personal training, athletic, you know, athlete industry. It was all guys that were being really successful in it. And then even like the one I was like looking at, like a Jillian Michaels, is so masculine and, you know, just like fierce in her energy.
So why do you think the men were more successful in that?
You know, well, in the area that I was working with the men, that didn't I started to surpass them pretty quick.
Girl,
job. I was like, there's room for, you know, more than just you guys here at the table. But they were just very, they would just like go at it. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait till it was their turn. They just like, you know, went after it. And for me, instead of like plowing my way through it, I just stepped back and I was like, well, I don't have to, you know, sprint towards it. I just need to create more opportunity. And so instead of talking about the thing, I was like, well, I'm just going to go create this thing and I'll try it and do it. I don't actually, honestly, I really don't believe in failure. I think every time we try something, this is research and development. Like, the only way I'm going to know if something 100%.
Yeah.
So I've never been afraid for something not to work. It doesn't work. And I'm like, well, okay. Do we need to change it? Like, do I need to ditch it completely? Or do I just have to, you know, like, maybe it's not for right now. Maybe I come back and try this like in a few months or a few years.
Cool.
And so I think kind of having that attitude, was really good for me. And then, you know, growing up, my parents were just like, nothing was impossible. Like, everything was figure outable. Everything was like, if you want to do it, you can put your head to it. Like, there's always a way. So I didn't grow up in an environment where we were never pressured, like, university is the path, you know, a degree is the path. This is the path. You have to have a pension. You have to have benefits. Like, I didn't grow up in that environment. I grew up in an environment where it was like, well, what actually makes you happy? What do you want to do? And what do you feel like the steps you need to do to move towards that? Wow. And so my brother, sister, and I are all very different in what we did, but we just always had a soft place to land. So
we had a safe place just to come up with the ideas and just be supported.
Be creative on your own.
Seen, heard, and safe, right? Like, that's love right there. That's badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So your parents, can I ask like what generation they are? Like, they sound pretty badass.
I wouldn't say my parents, if you met them, are badass. My parents were older when they had, well, it's not older now. They're like considered young parents now. They were 35 and 36 when I came into the picture. My older sister is 12 years older than me. And then my brother is 8 months younger than me. Like, there was like this big span of, my parents adopted me in the same month. My mom got pregnant with my brother, struggling to get pregnant.
Wow.
So 8 months apart. So my dad just celebrated his 80th and my mom is 77 and I'm 44. So my parents weren't like, they were just like your from the outside looking in, just your average, supportive, awesome parents. Like there was nothing looking at our family that was like, you know, made us look like we were any different than anybody else on the block. I just think it was, we did not grow up with any pressure in our house. And that is the difference, I think. There was zero pressure and there were no expectations put on us kids ever. Like
That's amazing.
our life was not about what our parents needed or wanted of us or forever.
Right. So they never had to mirror their own needs through their children.
Ever.
Like,
And you had your free will 100% of the time to
Completely.
choose.
I
That
just
says a
find
lot.
in the way that I grew up and like I always gravitated towards like-minded individuals when I was younger, right? And I grew up with a single mom and it was really hard to make me ends meet. And her background was, she was a baby boomer. So there was just a lot like my grandfather fought in the war. I mean, he was more, I think he taught soldiers how to use their guns.
Yeah.
And either way, they came home, you know, there's a piece of them that was a bit broken and they gravitated towards alcohol. And that's just, that seemed to be a life that was lived a lot. And so my mother and her siblings took that on and did their best to heal, but it still took to my generation, my sisters and myself and my cousins to kind of break that cycle.
Well, I think it's my siblings and I broke that for our parents. Like neither of my parents graduated high school. My dad dropped out when he was in grade 10. He just didn't identify as being a student. My mom was taken out of high school in grade 10 because her mom had just suffered her second nervous breakdown. And my mom was taken out of school at 15 to raise her 6 siblings.
Wow.
So, but then my parents went on to, like, my dad ended up creating the most successful business for himself. My mom ended up being, you know, the executive assistant in that company. And they didn't come from like opportunity. You know, they grew up in the West End of Toronto. Both of them, like, were from Ontario. You know, my mom grew up like 8 family members in a, you know, 2-bedroom household with 1 bathroom. My dad was raised by his grandparents because he had an alcoholic mother and an absent father for most of his life. Like, they didn't have, you know, those things. But so the reason for my mom and dad that everything came down to happy, safe, no pressure is because that's all they wanted growing up for themselves.
Makes sense.
Right. So it's like they didn't have those things. They found it together with one another. And that's what they fostered in us.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. It just, all this is just such a gift. I just think
it's amazing.
Always meant to be. And I am just so happy that we get to be here at the same time.
Yes.
Me too.
We all chose this, right? And you came in with a badass purpose. And as it sounds, it's like, I don't really need anybody, even though we all need somebody, but it just was ingrained. You've been doing this for a lifetime. So this lifetime, you're like, I know what I need to do. Let me do it. And with saying that, I'd love to talk a little bit more about hormones. And some tools and some tips that you can give to our incredible listeners. I myself, I went through PCOS. I worked with naturopaths. I discovered it on my own. I was like, there's something serious going on with my body. Been dealing with that for a long time. Ended up finding progesterone, natural progesterone, that really helped, along with other things. But I would love to let you talk about some things that really affect women's hormones that we can look into discussing, just what people can let go of out of their lives.
Well, it's a big one. And I mean, short answer is that everything impacts our hormones. Our hormones are chemicals in our body. They're chemical messengers. They are always communicating with not only one another, but every receptor on every cell and every organ and every part of your body. They impact so much more than just our menstrual cycle and our reproductive health and ability. They impact our mood and our emotions, our heart health, our brain health, our nervous system. Like, they're impacted in every which way in our body. And so the life that we live impacts the way that they express themselves. So, you know, the amount of stress that we have going on in our life, your hormones will be impacted by that. And it's, you know, whether it's like big, obvious stress that, you know, you could describe at the tip of your tongue, and I'm so overwhelmed and my schedule's to the max. And, you know, this person's causing stress in my life, or this situation, or I've just experienced this loss, or whatever it is that's going on. And then it's also, and I find this more often than not, it's the stress that we have gotten so used to that we just normalize all the time. Like, this is just my
100%.
life. This is my pace. This is just what it is. And so then, because it's just normal and this is what it is, we don't recognize that that is why you're showing up with the symptoms. And you could go and eat all the right food and take the right supplements and support your adrenals and your thyroid. And you could even take the progesterone and go for your walk and sleep and do all of that. But if the impetus, if like the catalyst, the thing underneath it all is the stress that your body is trying to micromanage all the time, it's like you have a leak in your tire that you're not aware of until one day you just walk out and it's flat. And nobody popped it overnight. It was there for a while. You just didn't realize it. And so little by little, you were losing pressure until one day you can't go operate the car. That's our body. It's like little by little, we're deflating in some capacity. And then we wake up one day and we say, I feel like it just happened overnight. But the more time you spend with people, and the more, you know, questions you ask and the deeper you go, what you recognize is they have actually been feeling less than amazing for a long time.
Right.
That, you know, whispers and little symptoms and things like that we just normalize. Like, oh, I've been constipated my whole life, no big deal. Oh, I've always had headaches, no big deal. Oh, I've always had dry skin, no big deal. Oh, everyone in my family is bloated all the time, no big deal. Oh, we all belch like truckers, no big deal. Oh,
Yeah.
I always, you know, I always wake up in the middle of the night between 2 and 4. Like, my mom has, my sister has, my grandma, like, that's just us. It's genetic. Like, that's just normal, you know.
No, I always hear that. It's
Right. So
genetic.
we do that all the
I
time,
agree.
which is actually really disempowering, because now you're like, you're giving it up and giving it out to something else. And so, and then that's where we get really frustrated, because we'll try to follow a plan or protocol or program, whatever. And they're like, well, nothing's changing. And it's like, okay, well, walk me through what you've changed. Because if the change is you've just taken supplements, you actually didn't change anything. Like, the supplement is there just the supplement is a bridge. It's like, you're over here right now and you're trying to get over there.
Yeah.
And we're just like going to build this temporary bridge. It's going to help to maybe mitigate some of the things that you're feeling and support you. But like, your life is the arch under that bridge. The support system are your choices. And, you know, so how we eat is a massive one that'll definitely impact your hormones. So if you're consuming foods that, you know, every time you eat it, you're like, oh, I'm going to pay for this. Like, you just know when you eat the thing, you're like bloated, gassy, you get tired after, you're moody, you're phlegmy, like you just feel groggy. And you know that could be a place to start, where it's like, okay, so instead of that food, what else could you choose that would make you feel less inflamed, right? Less tired, more energized from that. Hydration, like it's the most important tips for supporting your hormones are the most boring, unsexy, basic, and people don't want basic. People are like, if it was that easy, I would feel great. And I'm like, no, if you did it consistently,
Yeah.
you would feel a difference. So, you know, we're really good at like, I'll go for a couple of days and then I didn't do it 100%. So screw it. I'm not going to do it at all.
Yeah.
And this all or nothing mentality is really how we get in our own way. Like, we literally become the bottleneck to ourselves feeling better, because we like to make things more complex than they have to be.
I agree.
Right? So like,
oh, guilty.
You know, hydrating. And when you're drinking your water, it's like, you know, drink it filtered out of glass, amplify it, like put electrolytes in it, add minerals to it, add lemon, which is like super purifying and alkalizing to your body. Like, it can be these tiny little habit stacks that you create for yourself. Sleep is incredibly important for your hormones. And that can be the bane of existence for a lot of people, because they're like, thanks, Captain Obvious. Like, I know I'm supposed to sleep, but I can't friggin' sleep. And so what I teach women a lot is, you know, it's the same way I talk about exercise and movement are two different things. I want you to move every day, but I don't need you to exercise every day. I need you to rest every day. the sleep is something we'll work on. So sleep and
Perfect.
rest, it's like you have to figure out a way, you know, it's like if you can't sleep solidly all night, okay, then how do we incorporate more rest for your body? So those things are really important. So your hydration, your nutrition, and your sleep, super important for your hormones. And then it really becomes like specific to what is it that's showing up in your symptoms? Like, are you having horrible, painful periods? Are you having irregular periods? Are you having, you know, a bunch of acne and skin issues that are happening? Is your thyroid starting to show signs and symptoms of an issue? Is perimenopause rocking you? Like, you know, what is it that's actually going on? And then it's starting to look beneath the hood. So the symptoms are the most important piece in the beginning. You know, everybody wants to run to a test right away, which we run a lot of functional tests inside of our clinic, and I love them. However, we will not run a test on someone until we have done a thorough initial intake.
Beautiful.
Because you describing to us how long you've been feeling like this, when it started, what exactly has been going on, all the other bits and pieces. Like, we do a timeline. So we go as far back as you can remember. Like, when you were born and you were is there anything about your, you know, your mother's pregnancy or delivery with you that was important to know? Like, were you on antibiotics when you were really young? Were you sick a lot as a kid? Did you have tubes in your ears? Did you have your adenoids out, your tonsils out? Like, all those, were you constipated? Like, did you have food sensitivities? Like, all these different things. So
Legit.
we pull this story all the way up until the person that you are today. Like, how old were you when you got your period? How was it in the beginning? Were you ever put on the pill? How long did you stay on it? What about IUDs? You know, all these different things that happen and that go on. And then that helps us to understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling today. And that is the whole piece of, like, if we were better educated all along, as opposed to, I just need you to help me get rid of these hormonal migraines. Okay, we're going to work on that. I got to know more about what's going on with these hormonal migraines, not just that 4 days before your period, they start and they don't stop until 2 days after your bleed begins. Like, that's part of the information, but I need more.
Question. What is there a common reason why people get migraines at all? Or is it different for everybody?
It's different for everyone, but when it's hormonal, a lot of the times it can be that progesterone is bottoming out and estrogen is still riding high.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, so that can be one of the reasons. Also, histamine is a big one. So somebody who has a higher, like a mast cell activation, they have a higher response to histamine. So foods that are rich in histamines, those things can definitely elicit migraines as well too.
Can you give us an example of foods that are what you just said, the histamine?
All delicious things, cheese, wine, avocado, dried fruits. Those are going to be a lot of your higher histamines, citruses, strawberries, kiwi. So there's certain foods that are higher in histamine. So a lot of people who also suffer from allergies, who've had mold exposure, you know, and there's different triggers you'll recognize too. Like, if you go into like a musty space, or like you open up a cottage for the first time and it has like that mildewy, you know, or you walk down the aisle in the grocery store where they sell the detergents and all of that, and you are instantly like, feel like you're getting a headache. Some of those different things, you have a glass of wine or some alcohol and you get, you know, flushed, red face, congested right away, those kind of things. Those are some different signs that you probably have some sensitivities to foods that are higher in histamine. The other way it'll show up is in the gut. So a lot of gas, a lot of bloating. SIBO is very common, like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You know, the gut is a compass. It doesn't actually matter what's going on in the body. So even when it comes to hormones, depending on the symptoms. So let's say we have someone who, like, point blank, they're like, the only thing about my hormones that is irritating me is my periods. I'm really in a lot of pain the first couple of days before it starts. My boobs are super sore. My mood's all over the place. I have a heavy bleed. Like, it feels like my whole period comes in 2 days. I have clots and those things. There's a lot we can do to go in and like bring a lot of support within her next 2 to 3 cycles without even probably having to testing. There's just some things that we can start to bring in and support. The difference is if you have something like that, and then you also have, I'm gassy and bloated all the time, I don't poop. Like, I am really quite constipated, or I alternate back and forth. The only way I have a bowel movement is that, you know, I drink my coffee, or I have, you know, magnesium citrate. you know, laxative, whatever that may be. Now we got a deeper issue going on, because for that individual who's not having regular bowel movements, now your drainage and elimination is actually probably a big part of what is going upstream and creating the inflammation that's showing up in your period. And so this is again why it's like, we have this one thing that to us, the individual, are like, this is simple. It's like the equivalent of me being like, you know, to my husband, can you just go build me this thing? And he's like, and my husband's a builder, and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you think you could do that in a week? And he's like, I could do it in 3 months. And in my brain, I'm like, but why? You just have to like do this thing. And he's like, no, you have to do this and this and this. It's the same thing with our body. We have this thing and we're like, well, I just like, can I feel better by my next period?
Right.
Maybe, but after everything you've told me, like this has been going on for years, if not decades. Right. So it's understanding all of those bits and pieces. But the great thing is that for that woman who's describing all those issues, who has the gut stuff, we don't go to the hormones first. We go to her gut. So we work on her elimination. We work on her digestion. We work on her ability to absorb the nutrients she's consuming. Guess what's going to feel better as a result? The inflammation in her period. Her mood's going to be more stable. Her boobs won't be as sore. The flow won't be as intense. So it's like the person wants to pin the tail on like the symptom donkey. Us as the practitioners, you know, where our gifts are, is being able to like pull back and look at the whole environment and then understand this. These are the roots. Like, this is where we got to go.
Wow.
That was a badass answer for that question.
Really good. And you know,
so good.
This is what we do, is we bring on the best of the best, because now we have a place for people to go, and even myself included. I'm obsessed with this sort of thing about hormones, you know, and even about aging gracefully and naturally. Like I love how you're so holistic and you're beautiful and you're aging so beautifully. You're so young. And it's like, because you're just exuding health and what you're putting into your body, and also how you're operating your body. And, you know, I saw that you have this beautiful routine for yourself with your infrared sauna and your workouts. So maybe we can talk a little bit about some tips of what people can do to help with their bodies and also with their appearance. I know everything comes from within, but if we can go there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and for me, it's like, yes, I'm letting all the gray come through. I'm
Love
just,
it.
you know, doing all things in that way. And for me, it was conscious decisions, because when you do what I do for a living and you're the one that's running the test and reading the labs, and you're understanding the impact long-term of some of the decisions that we make for ourselves as women. And then you also are understanding it from like really where it's coming from, this desire to look different or to not age. Like, you know, I just turned 44 2 days ago, and
Happy birthday.
so thank you. I love being in my 40s. It's not something that and it's also, you know, like I'm raising teens, and my oldest is a 17-year-old daughter, and I don't want her to have it in our home where it's like, I'm trying to cover up the parts of me that are, you know, aging. And I don't even want to say like getting older, because I don't feel like I'm getting older. Chronologically, the years keep going by, but I don't feel like I'm getting older. I feel like I'm just getting started. Like I feel like
I love that.
I've just been born somewhat recently.
And yeah, I love that you're saying this, because I preach this all the time. I'm like, age is nothing but a number. This is our soul in here. We're energy. I don't co-sign to any of that bullshit. We can reverse anything.
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to that health aspect, because when you're just taking care of yourself and you're using those tools and getting down to the nitty gritty, your youth it just comes back naturally. Yeah. I always found when you do this kind of work that whatever happens on the outer shell is just a fucking perk. It's seriously.
Yeah.
So I'll be 42 this year, and I agree with you. I'm loving my 40s. Yeah. I feel like I'm just getting started, and the level of wealth that the level of health and knowledge that comes in with the actions and how I'm observing the world makes me feel so much more confident into teaching these things and just leading others what really does work, because there really is a strong foundation we can go off of. And I'm much like you. I did start mine with fitness, but that's not for not everybody starts that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was the next thing that you wanted to touch on? Because you were talking
some of the
about
routines and things.
Yeah, let's go there,
So,
because I'm really interested.
I'm way less rigid now than I was when my kids were younger. Like, I had to be super structured and routine because they didn't care what I wanted to do in a day. So if I didn't get the things done for myself before those children woke up, like, it was not happening. Yeah. So I used to wake up much earlier back then. And like, I had, my, 12-point routine of like lemon water, and then journal, and then do this and then do that. And now it's like, I get up, I move my body. That is a non-negotiable for me. Moving my body is how I come home to my body every single day. That is how I connect to myself. Some days I'm actually like working out. Other days I'm literally just moving. So it could be a walk, it could be yoga, it could be mobility. Other days it's like a heavy strength training session. I taught bar this morning. Like, it's always different no matter what. I use really good quality, very simple skincare products. I use oil on my skin. Yeah. I don't fuss around with stuff. I use non-toxic makeup in very minimal amounts of it. I am really conscientious of the quality of food and products that I put in my body. So for me, less is always more. I rotate my supplements. So depending on the season, like literally the season we're living in and the season that I am in my own actual body, that is what will determine for me what I take. I also run functional labs on myself every single year so that I understand my own chemistry. Yeah. So I take some of that data and that information, and that's just part of it. Like, I don't get a test back and go, oh, based on that result, I 100% have to do this thing. Right. I look and go, well, am I symptomatic of that, or was whatever going on? Things like infrared sauna, red light therapy, that stuff, I use those on, like, coming into the fall now, I will use that sauna more often. In the summer, because I'm walking outside every day. I also teach in an infrared hot yoga studio once a week. I don't tend to use that as much. Fall and winter for sure. So a lot of those things intuitively. I will double down on more of my self-care in my luteal phase coming into my period. That's when my body is like, listen, you need these things now, like, get yourself upstairs to bed. And I will always have it stacked. So when I'm reading, I have the red light next to me, or if I'm stretching on the ground, the red light is on in front of me. So it's not like, oh, I need to stretch and then I need to red light, and then I need to wash on my face, and then I have to read the book. No,
that doesn't make any sense, because our cycle.
But a lot of people think it that way, right? Like, they're like, it's too many things to
I agree. Yeah. But I agree with doing this intuitively, because again, just like you said, we're falling into different phases every month and quarterly too.
Yeah.
Accurate, every week. Yeah. Every month. Yeah.
Well, even quarterly, I find my body, like seasonally, I guess.
Well, we do. We really, completely.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And every season cross correlates back to a different phase that the moon is moving through, but also your 4 phases you move through. Like, we are coming out of the season of summer, which is the season of ovulation, which is the season of the full moon energy. Now we are moving into the fall, which is the luteal energy, which is the waning moon energy. And so it's like, again,
what energy is that? What is it?
It's a very deep reflective energy. It's your pull back. It's a scrub. It's like, get rid of the things that are no longer serving you. All of the half-finished projects, commitments, things you have in your life, make a clear decision now. Either go and finish them before you jump onto the next shiny thing, or choose to just completely quit them and just be honest with yourself that the reason you haven't finished them is because you don't want to do them.
I'm just in that phase.
Yes. So it's like fall. This is my favorite season. My favorite phase is the luteal energy, because it's where we get really crisp. Like, we get clear. There's a lot of discernment, if you're honest with yourself, that can happen in that phase of like, what is a yes and what is a no? Let's stop playing this silly game where we think we're going to do that thing and we're either not, or we just like don't want to. Like, that's the thing, is you can actually say, I don't want to do that. Therefore, I am not going to do that. And you either then are left with this incredible white space where you just get to like notice and choose, or now you get to redirect your energy into the thing that you actually do want to be part of.
Wow. Kristen and I have been saying it's not a fuck yes. It's
Yeah.
just sorry, it's a no.
It's a no.
Yeah.
You have to.
If it's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and for me, it's like my body will tell me. Like, you know, in the past when I used to get opportunities and all these things, I would be like, I have to say yes to that because what if it doesn't come back around? Or
Oh,
I have to
okay.
say yes to it because, you know, what if somebody else says yes to it? And that's how I used to operate like many, many years ago. And for me now, I'm just like, I'm the person where I'm like, give me the night to think about it. Like, I'm like, I literally am the one, I got to sleep on it.
Okay.
So I'm never going to be like a quick yes or quick no. I'm always going to be like, just give me a moment. And then I just will filter it through. That's also why moving my body is important. A walk is important, all those things, because it's where I will get my clarity. Like
I
that's
think that's legit though. So are your kids in sports at all? Do they play
both.
sports?
Well, actually, my daughter, not so much. My son plays rep hockey.
Okay. So does
Yeah.
mine. And so this is what I learned because of having children and being in the sports, especially in the hockey world. It's just a lot of things, politics can happen. And so the rule is, if anything does happen, you got to give yourself 24 to 48 hours before you even message a manager or the coach. Well, hopefully you're not messaging the coach, but
Yeah. It's good to give time.
absolutely
Yeah.
sleep on it, because if you're staying in a balance and your hormones are driving or the driving force, you're going to have some regrets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like just sleep on it and take it from there.
I'm just being mindful of time and
Okay.
respectful of Jen's time. We're at 2:27. So, to kind of close this out, I had seen that you have, do you have a course or an offering or something that you have coming up? Or I think it was at the September.
So September is so I have a masterclass that's happening on the 13th that is free, and then the Hormone Project Academy launches on September 26th. So the academy is different than what the Hormone Project has been for the last 7 years. I've really changed my energy and focus on supporting women who are like the keen learners. Like, you don't want to work with me if you just want to be told what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to teach you and educate you and empower you. And so the Hormone Project Academy is for the woman who wants to learn as much as she can about her body for her and for her daughters, okay, for her children. My son knows just as much. My son knows more about the female body than most women do.
Good, because when he grows and picks his mate or whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He knows a lot. But it's also supporting practitioners. So the Hormone Project Academy, I am also bringing on a lot of practitioners who work with women in general. So they don't have to be like, you know, health practitioner, nutritionist. We have chiros, RMTs, instructors, physiotherapists who want to understand more about women's health and hormones so that they can have better depth of conversations with their clients. Because when women come to you and you're working with them in any spectrum and they have all these questions about their body and you don't, you know, have the answer or know where to direct them to or have those types of connections, it doesn't feel fantastic on that practitioner end. So the academy is also bringing practitioners in. You get quizzed on the different modules, you commit with a certificate of learning. So it is a much deeper level of understanding. And then on the business side of things, I have the Audacious Woman, which that is a business mentorship for female entrepreneurs who are here to do things differently.
Wow.
Move mountains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, a lot of notes here,
Thanks
Jenn.
for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for saying yes. And you know what always makes me feel amazing is the fact that you had your 24, 48 hours and said yes to us.
Yeah.
And all of our viewers. I'm always appreciative of everything because it's a choice, right? It's a yes or a no.
Yep. Always.
And
well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're
and
grateful.
Everybody, you guys can look down into the notes and see her website and all of her handles, but you can follow her on at Jenn Pike on Instagram, correct?
Yeah.
You got everything
Jenn
on
Pike
Instagram.
and the
right?
Audacious Woman. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
And the Audacious Woman. Love it.
Great.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody tuning in. Have a beautiful day. Talk soon.